A scribe carefully presses his stylus, his hands stained with fertile Mesopotamian clay. He etches symbols onto a tablet that will outlive kingdoms. He inscribes tales of beings the Sumerians knew as gods. These beings descended from the heavens. They shaped the very earth. Yet, these ancient records detail not distant deities. They describe beings with names, families. They had a surprising, almost tangible, purpose on this planet. For millennia, cuneiform tablets from Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Babylonia spoke of the Anunnaki. This divine council's name translated to princely seed, or those of royal seed. They were revered beings, children of the sky god, An. They were assigned the profound duty of decreeing mankind's fate. Their presence was woven into the fabric of cosmic order, law, and kingship. This spanned across the ancient Near East. Just as Olympian gods held sway over Greeks, the Anunnaki were considered supreme. They held humanity's destiny, overseeing what unfolded for whom and when. While the exact number of these deities remained uncounted, 7 names emerged repeatedly. These formed the foundation of their perceived celestial domain. Foremost was An himself, patriarch of this divine order. Known as Anu in later Akkadian writings, he was the ultimate authority. Beside him stood Ninhursag, also known as Kai or Ninmah. She was the earth and mother goddess, whose sacred duties revolved around birth. She also sustained life. Then came Enlil. The mere mention of his name made devotees tremble. Enlil was no ordinary power. He commanded the wind and storm. He was the unwavering enforcer of divine decisions. To stand before him was to face the one who shaped immediate destiny. He earned his title as the powerful acting ruler through his formidable presence. Yet, not all were figures of such profound dread. Enki, often celebrated as benevolent, was the god of wisdom. He was the master of water, creator of nature, and source of magic. Those seeking protection often invoked his name. Enki's radiance was matched by Utu, the sun god. He embodied truth and justice, bringing light to the world. And Nana, the moon deity, watched over wisdom and the passage of time. But the pantheon also held a figure of universal fear, Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld. Her dominion over death and judgment meant no one called upon her willingly. Instead, it was her solemn duty to summon mortals to her realm. Sumerian texts say these beings maintained equilibrium between heaven, earth, and underworld. Their core function was to decree people's fate and ensure balance across all realms. They upheld moral and legal order among humans they had brought into existence. For earliest humans, this divine arrangement appeared settled. They found purpose in tending temples and adhering to decreed divine order. Everything flowed in harmony until a seismic shift began to rumble through their understanding. As empires of Babylon and Assyria rose, veneration gravitated towards new figures. Marduk absorbed older deities' powers, becoming Babylon's central god. This transition is documented in texts like the Dad Enuma Elish. This shift from polytheism to monotheistic thought pushed older divine councils into background. They were reframed as mythical figures, angels, or demons. They became symbolic echoes from a forgotten past. The Anunnaki, once formidable, receded into folklore, whispered tales from grandparents to children. In 1976, an unexpected reinterpretation burst forth, challenging ancient narratives profoundly. Zechariah Sitchin, a journalist and author, presented a theory about the Anunnaki. His book, The 12th Planet, posed a radical question about misinterpretation. What if the ancient texts had been fundamentally misinterpreted by modern scholars? This challenge sparked immediate and intense debate, reshaping accepted history's roots. After more than 3 decades studying cuneiform tablets, Sitchin revealed his findings. He proposed Anunnaki were not mythical gods, but extraterrestrial beings from another planet. This world, Nibiru, had an elongated orbit around our sun every 600 years. Nibiru spent vast stretches in cold, dark outer solar system reaches. It only occasionally swept through inner planets before vanishing for millennia. It was a rogue planet, its trajectory unusual and unknown to ancient astronomers. Yet, Sitchin claimed the ancient Sumerians knew of this celestial body. They depicted a large celestial body on cylinder seals, and astronomical texts. They seemingly held knowledge of distant planets like Neptune and Uranus. These remained invisible until 18th and 19th century telescope discoveries. This sparked an immediate question. How could Sumerians have known this? Sitchin's interpretation offered a startling answer. The Anunnaki taught them. The beings from Nibiru shared their advanced astronomical wisdom with humans. They shared wisdom with the humans they had brought into existence. Mainstream astronomy offered no conclusive evidence of Nibiru's existence. Decades of searching for Planet X or Planet 9 yielded no definitive results. Gravitational anomalies hint at a possible unseen body in the outer solar system. If Nibiru were real, what cataclysm compelled their arduous journey to Earth? Sitchin's translation unearthed a compelling narrative. Nibiru was dying. Its atmosphere was rapidly deteriorating, losing its capacity to retain heat. As the atmospheric veil thinned, surface temperature plummeted, pushing Anunnaki towards extinction. Their scientists, in a desperate search, discovered a solution for their planet. Dispersing fine gold particles into the upper atmosphere could create a reflective shield. This would deflect the sun's rays, stabilizing Nibiru's rapidly changing climate. This intricate engineering required vast quantities of gold, a resource Nibiru lacked. And so, their gaze turned outwards, searching other planetary systems. Anunnaki astronomers meticulously mapped systems, searching for worlds rich in metals. They identified one ideal candidate: a water-rich planet teeming with life. This world was geologically active and critically abundant in gold deposits. Critically abundant in gold deposits near its surface. That planet, the only suitable one they found, was Earth. Around 450,000 years ago, the Anunnaki launched their first expedition to our world. They did not come as explorers or scientists embarking on peaceful research. They arrived as miners, driven by the existential urgency of their dying home. Their mission was clear: extract resources and process them, then transport them back to Nibiru. They established their initial base in southern Mesopotamia. This was within the Fertile Crescent, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They named this region Edion, or Home of the Righteous Ones. It also meant Place of the Pure Ones. This name resonates strikingly with the biblical Garden of Eden. From their base in Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki expanded operations. They spread across the entire planet. A vast network arose across these regions. It encompassed mining colonies in southern Africa, where gold ran deep. Sophisticated processing facilities were in Mesopotamia. A spaceport in the Sinai Peninsula launched materials. These were designed to send refined materials back to Nibiru. Every aspect of their enterprise was meticulously structured. This ensured the survival of their home world. What did these extraterrestrial beings look like? Sumerian tablets and artwork offered detailed depictions. They were fundamentally humanoid: 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. They also had an upright, bipedal posture. Their basic structure resembled humans enough. Interbreeding was later a significant plot point. Such mixing was possible. But the similarities ended there. By human standards, the Anunnaki were colossal. They stood between 8 and 12 feet tall. They towered over primitive early humans. Imagine encountering such a being, not as a digital illusion. It was a physical, imposing presence. The psychological impact must have been immense. Perhaps this explains why ancient humans perceived them as gods. Their facial features were more angular than ours. They had large, piercing eyes and long limbs. This gave their movements a graceful quality. Despite their great size, the Anunnaki were not a singular entity, or even a small group. They were an entire civilization, comprised of thousands of individuals. They had intricate family structures and a complex hierarchy. This mirrored any human government. Understanding their internal power dynamics became essential. This included their decision-makers and personal rivalries. These factors would shape not only their history, but humanity's. Sitchin described a distinct hierarchy among the Anunnaki rulers. Anu remained the paramount sky god, supreme sovereign of Nibiru. Nibiru was a realm so vital that he rarely departed its boundaries. Yet, even from afar, He could not escape conflicts. These involved his offspring, Enki and Enlil. Born to different mothers, both sons possessed immense power. They believed they deserved ultimate authority over the Earth colony. This intense dispute over succession would fuel conflicts for millennia. Ultimately, it influenced the course of humanity's destiny. Enlil, born through Anus' official wife, was considered the legitimate heir according to Anunnaki law. When Anu designated administrators for Earth, Enlil received the title of overall commander. He oversaw all operations, from mining to administration and interactions with the primitive inhabitants. The ancient texts portray him as stern, uncompromising, and absolutely dedicated to maintaining order and hierarchy. Enlil championed law and structure, believing implicitly in the Anunnaki's divine right to rule. For him, Earth was a resource to be utilized, and its primitive inhabitants a workforce to be managed. Efficient, perhaps, but detached. The Sumerians, it is said, feared Enlil more than they loved him. For he was a leader who made choices for the greater collective, even if those choices entailed considerable suffering for individuals. Enki, in stark contrast, represented a different force. Though he was Anus' firstborn son, chronologically, his mother was not Anu's official consort, rendering him illegitimate in the strict sense of succession. He felt that by age, capability, and sheer brilliance, the Earth command should have been his. The Earth command should have been his. Denied his perceived right by law and tradition, Enki made himself indispensable in other ways. While Enlil administered with an iron hand, Enki became the chief scientist, the master engineer, the genetic architect. He established his base in the Abzu, deep in the heart of the mining operations, where he directed the extraction efforts and conducted elaborate experiments. It was Enki who studied the native hominids of Earth, the primitive ancestors of modern humanity. And when the lower-ranking Anunnaki workers, the Ajiji, finally rebelled against their exhausting toil in the mines. It was Enki who presented a solution that would irrevocably alter planetary history. Other crucial figures played roles in this cosmic drama. Nima, half-sister to both Enlil and Enki, served as chief medical officer and head of the science division. Her biological expertise was critical when Enki proposed engineering a worker race. Inanna, Enlil's granddaughter, was another powerful figure, described as equally formidable. And Marduk, Enki's firstborn son, believed he deserved supreme authority over Earth, based on his lineage, positioning himself as Babylon's supreme deity, and directly challenging Enlil's dominion, a factor that would contribute significantly to the eventual decline of the Anunnaki presence. The Ajiji, the lower-ranking gods, served as the primary laborers. The overarching purpose of this complex Anunnaki hierarchy on Earth remained singular: the relentless pursuit of gold. For thousands of years, the Anunnaki governed Earth with an undeniable authority. This was not a period of peace, but one characterized by intense labor, unprecedented genetic experimentation, and rising tensions. In the beginning, the project seemed to proceed smoothly. Mining operations commenced in southern Africa, in the region they called Abzu. Thousands of Ajiji laborers toiled, digging deep underground tunnels to extract the precious ore. Intriguingly, modern archaeological discoveries in southern Africa reveal ancient mines and tunnels, dating back potentially 100,000 years or more, predating any recognized human civilization. Sitchin asked, could these be the abandoned workings of the Anunnaki? Despite the profound motivation to save their home planet, the work was undeniably severe. Even for the physically superior Anunnaki. For approximately 150,000 years, the Ajiji endured these conditions. Generation after generation descended into the darkness, extracted the ore, processed it, and shipped it home. With each passing generation, resentment simmered and grew. Then, around 300,000 years ago, according to Sitchin's timeline, the Ajiji reached their breaking point. Their protests against the grueling labor grew so intense that the Anunnaki rulers faced a critical decision. suppress the rebellion, or alleviate their burden. Enki's idea prevailed: why destroy the rebels when they could be replaced? Thus began the most audacious experiment in Earth's history. Enki and Nima embarked on the creation of a new species, a workforce engineered specifically to serve the Anunnaki humans. Their experiments bear a striking resemblance to modern genetic engineering. The ancient texts speak of combining the essence of the Anunnaki with the essence of primitive Earth beings. One passage vividly describes taking the blood of a young Anunnaki god and mixing it with clay. For millennia, this was understood as deities forming humans from the earth. But Sitchin proposed a reinterpretation. What if blood represented genetic material, and clay was an ancient term for biological matter, perhaps cells or DNA extracted from native hominids? If so, the passage would describe genetic engineering, a concept scientists are exploring today with techniques like FIRO-ISPR, yet one seemingly detailed by the Sumerians millennia ago. Eventually, they succeeded. The being they created was called Adamu, a prototype, the first viable human, imbued with Anunnaki genetics that conferred greater intelligence, language capabilities, and the capacity to follow complex instructions. He was the perfect worker, but a critical issue soon arose. Like mules, these hybrid humans were unable to reproduce naturally. Enki then introduced another modification, granting humans reproductive capability, bestowing upon them sexuality and the knowledge of procreation. Enlil was profoundly displeased. Creating workers was one matter, but engineering a species capable of independent reproduction and multiplying beyond Anunnaki control was quite another. According to Sitchin, the texts describe a tense confrontation that nearly escalated to violence. Enlil demanded the destruction of these newly enhanced humans, but Enki refused. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Humans could retain their reproductive capacity, but they would be expelled from the Anunnaki settlements, left to survive independently in the untamed wilderness, and humanity did thrive. Within generations, the population expanded dramatically. Yet, an unforeseen development began to unfold. The Anunnaki and humans started to interbreed. The offspring of these unions, half Anunnaki and half human, possessed unique characteristics. But their very existence created further friction. Pure-blooded Anunnaki expressed resentment towards these hybrids, who often sided with their human kin rather than their Anunnaki parents. Enlil observed this with growing alarm, seeing his worst fears materialize. Not only were humans multiplying rapidly, but they were now intertwining with Anunnaki bloodlines, creating a complicated political landscape that deeply destabilized the established order. As human consciousness expanded, as populations swelled, and as hybrid bloodlines complicated the Anunnaki hierarchy, internal tensions within their leadership began to escalate dramatically. The philosophical chasm between Enlil's authoritarian control and Enki's more liberal approach intensified into actual conflict. The ancient texts began to describe the gods engaged in devastating wars. Marduk, Enki's son, directly challenged Enlil's authority over Earth, igniting conflicts detailed with stark precision in the texts. Weapons that could turn stone to dust, blinding lights that disoriented armies, and plagues that afflicted without physical contact. Some interpret these as ancient descriptions of advanced weaponry, potentially nuclear or biological, while others draw parallels to biblical plagues. But in the end, Earth itself seemed to reach its limit. With its gold resources severely depleted, a natural catastrophe loomed, a great flood. Enlil viewed this as a stark opportunity to reset everything, to allow humanity to perish. But Enki, in a defiant act, warned a human named Zusudra to construct a vessel and survive. This dramatic turning point occurred around 11,000 BCE. The Anunnaki rulers, their purpose on Earth concluding, departed for Nibiru in their spacecraft, observing the cataclysm from orbit. When the waters finally receded, they discovered that humanity had endured, preserved through Zusudra's vessel. By then, their control was irreversibly fractured. The Anunnaki gradually withdrew, returning to Nibiru, as its immense orbit carried it away from Earth, once more, leaving behind only their enigmatic texts, monumental structures, and a thriving human population. What this legacy meant for the people who lived through these epochs, for those who carved the stories into stone and clay, was an enduring testament to forces beyond their full comprehension, shaping their world and their future in ways they could only just begin to understand. In ways they could only just begin to understand. In ways they could only just begin to understand. In ways they could only just begin to understand.